Awesome.
So the floor is yours.
Yeah, there's a couple things I wanted to do today. First was there's some incredible questions that came in from the community that I can touch on real quick. Second is Irina, right? Or Irina and Soren, there you go. They're doing a project that they wanted some advice on for me about, but I mean, they're just so well designed and the advice would be so generic that I felt like it'd be really beautiful to kind of walk through their project with all of you, because that's all how to be an ambassador and grow the seeds movement in your local communities and kind of get this renaissance underway. So I feel like that might be a good frame. Is there anything else really pressing that anyone wants to put onto the agenda on top of those two main topics?
I don't know if we are talking about seeds in the communities. If we would have time, could we talk about like supplying seeds, you know, like continuously for those people to have the basic income and that sort of questions, please?
Absolutely.
I also collected your questions, Victoria. Your questions from the channel are also in the document.
Thank you.
Okay, well, maybe let's just jump into the doc then, and we'll take it from there. If you have any questions, just add them to the chat as we go, and I'll try to cover them if we have time.
Okay, let me share the screen. So first thing was, and that was the initial idea anyways, Rieki, maybe you could share a little bit your personal history and how, you know, seeds became, like the first seeds became an idea. And yeah, here the question from Drigo was maybe start with a little storytelling on this part, how you founded seeds, a brief synopsis of the journey, and the big picture, macroeconomics, how the token is designed, relationship with HIFA, why HIFA has such a massive allocation. I think you answered a lot of this in the channel already, but this was kind of how we thought maybe that could be an intro for you to open up like the vision of seeds.
These are incredible questions. I'm certainly not gonna go into my own personal story. I'm very anti having this like founder thing. I certainly didn't found Seeds. I'm just here serving the movement and facilitating at best, and maybe not even doing that very well. My particular, care about this is I'm all about eco-villages and creating a world worthy of my future daughter and myself. I want to live in a village where there's just food everywhere in abundance, and I'm not worried about the rest of the world being on fire and people living in poverty and et cetera, et cetera. I thought that meant, running to the forest, and I actually did that. I moved to Central America, bought 26 acres with a bunch of friends, and we started growing our own food. And our idea is we're going to create a little island sanctuary where we're going to be okay and we're going to have our own community. Fortunately that failed, and that led me on a journey of, why did it fail? How do you get a group of people to come together to make decisions well? How do you steward resources collectively? Like, how do you actually do a village? So that path was, maybe 3 or 4 years of living in eco-villages, learning what works, what doesn't work. I started setting up like retreat centers to help people find their purpose and passion, because that's what I was afforded the opportunity to do. And I thought it was so incredible and important for us to be able to like recreate the rites of passage ceremony, help people get in touch with who they are, what their purpose is, like what drives them, what their passion is, and then be able to bring that to the world. Well, we did that a couple times. People figured that out. They had this like breakthrough, was incredible. And then they went back to living in their old system. And, 2 months later, they're back in old patterns. So we're like, crap. We need something for them to actually be able to step into in order to make that real. So this is kind of where I was sitting when I was doing a whole lot of really weird things, like this is public, I don't care. Doing like mushroom ceremonies and fasting and doing breath work and just a lot of plant medicine to try to find out how I could best serve this transition. During that period of my life, one of my friends approached me to do a local peer-to-peer food platform. I think peer-to-peer food is incredibly necessary to localize our food systems. We need to be eating local food. We need to be growing food, not lawns. Like as close as we can get from plant to mouth as possible, that's what we need. And if we have a peer-to-peer food platform that's helping people rent their lawns to growers, cook food out of the house and sell it to their neighbors, brilliant. Problem with these platforms is they charge fees, they don't scale, nobody uses the platform, so their business models are broken. A lot of projects like this have tried and failed for that exact reason. So my friend was doing that. I told him this, I love the idea, yes, important, but it's not gonna work. I'm trading cryptocurrencies because that's just what I did at the time. He knew that. He was like reaching out to me. He's like, hey, do we do a cryptocurrency for this platform? I originally told him no. This was about 4 years ago. But after he had planted that idea in my head, I was doing a breath work and I'm breathing and I'm feeling this like expansion and contraction, and all of a sudden became like this money supply expanding and contracting. And it all just kind of like came together that we could build a financial system based on the local food system. And that's what we can use to make this platform better than free. So it's actually better than free for people to exchange local food than it would be to otherwise. Because the money that we're bringing into circulation can go to reward people who are growing local food and exchanging on these platforms. So this is actually where Seed started. It was called Light Food, and it was all about local food systems and creating a financial system based off of local food. And it just made sense in a lot of ways, because then when you go and approach someone about this new obscure currency and they're like, well, what can I do with this? If the answer is you could buy healthy, local, organic, regenerative food tonight, they'll be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll take this for my plumbing then. So it made sense to then base the currency on local food. Cool, so that's where it started, but it kind of snowballed as we were figuring out the economics behind that. We're like, wait, this doesn't just work for local food, this works for anything. This is just a new financial system. Well, if we have a new financial system, we need to learn how to govern it. So that started this whole process on how do we do decentralized governance. And then after we're down that road, we're like, hey, well, we're a group of people building this thing and we need to be decentralized. So we need to decentralize ourselves. How do we do that? And this is where HIFA was born. So HIFA was like, how do we as a group of people who are helping build Seeds, decentralize ourselves out of, Seeds itself. So then, hopefully you guys are tracking and this is making any sense at all. Originally, when we were planning on doing HIFA, we're actually thinking of doing a legal entity and then just getting rid of it. We actually didn't want to do any legal entity at all, but we had to because we had to host our apps somewhere. So we're kind of like pushed in a corner to do a legal entity, but now we're figuring out how to do away with that as well. So anyway, HIFA has such a massive allocation of the overall tokens, 25%. Yes, that is a massive one in one perspective, but it's also probably a small one in another perspective. When typical companies launch a product, they own 100% of that product. And if they give away 5% as kind of like a benefit, then people are like, oh, wow, so grateful, So holding only 20% is in one sense kind of small, depending on how you want to look at it. Also, it was just the scale we were looking at. When we first got this going, it was going to be a local food kind of obscure thing. But as we really started building this, we realized this could be a financial system to underpin a different type of civilization. So it just kind of got out of proportion from what we initially thought. So maybe 20% seems pretty big, in hindsight, but at the time it seemed actually pretty small. So anyway, 20% just seemed like a very reasonable and rational number for us to be able to claim for HIFA to put this all together and reward all the people who are taking the risk to build such an audacious platform. As you can imagine, that early on in this, as we're talking to people about building an alternative financial and economic system, most people thought that this is the most ridiculous thing you could do. Yes, we need this, but it's probably not going to work. So we had to kind of have a little bit of reward for people to, join this mission and turn down some of the other really beautiful offers that they had to focus on this thing that sounded completely crazy. So that's what those tokens were set aside to help compensate people for that level of risk. As with all of this, though, this is a new world experiment. We're absolutely not going to get anything right, and maybe not even good the first time around. So we're always looking to evolve and change this. So if it does look like in hindsight that 20% was too much, then we can actually put up a proposal in the Seeds community, and the Seeds citizens can drive this. And I'm telling you this, and this could be seen as maybe something I shouldn't be telling you. But the citizens of Seeds could actually put up a proposal to say, you know what, we're going to double the circulating supply of seeds. We're not going to give any more of it to HIFA. And now instead of HIFA owning 25% of the initial supply, it could be 12.5%, and you guys could literally just take, anyway. So at the end of the day, the Seed citizens are the ones that are fully driving this boat. If they feel like what HIFA took was unequitable, then you guys can put up a proposal and fix that inequality. And I strongly suggest that if citizens feel like it's inequitable, that they do something to fix that inequality. So I guess it's up to the citizens to decide if that is in fact unequitable or not. Okay, that was an incredible amount of information.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, but amazing. And the questions are also incredible. So you're doing a very good job. And I just wanted to make it a little bit, not only you and me talking, but asking Drigo whether that was mainly what you were looking for as an answer. And then if that's so, then maybe asking Martina whether you want to voice your question yourself and not just me reading it from the top here. Okay, thank you, Drigo. I see your thumbs up. So Martina, do you want to voice your questions?
Yeah, hello. Thank you, Dani. Okay, so I've got two questions. Question number one is more in a sense of, as far as I understood, seeds is a living organism and it's self-governed. And it's self-governed by people or human beings which are themselves growing and very dynamic. So we have two dynamic parts in this whole play. And the question is now, what do you think is most important to grow successfully? Because it's super dynamic and we can change everything all the time. So what is the most important thing for you needed in this whole process of growing and being successful?
ooh, it's hard to ever say something's most important. You get into this weird hierarchy thing. But what I would strongly suggest is that all of us, especially everyone here, everyone in Haifa, everyone joining this movement right now, that we take the time to figure out what's our purpose, like how do we really want to show up in this movement, what really lights us up, what's going to get us incredibly excited and passion filled, and what's going to help us thrive essentially. Part of that is getting your diet on lock and eating a lot of healthy, local, organic, regenerative food. So definitely start doing that if you're not already. If you're not growing gardens, start doing that as well. So I highly encourage that, because what we really need in this movement and what's going to make this successful is people who are highly attuned, highly healthy, and aligned to what their purpose is and how they can serve this transition. And that's going to be 150 different ways, some of which I don't even conceive of because it's going to be so beautiful and needed in this movement, and I just can't even envision it. And we probably need a lot of those types of things. And they're going to be discovered with people coming up and just like bearing their souls, figuring out how they can serve this movement, getting in touch with it, and then showing up in that capacity. And what Seeds is really here to do is to try to support that journey. So this is what we eventually want to do with universities and making it better than free, is that people will have the time and space to be able to take a retreat, figure out what their purpose is, what their passion is, and Seeds can subsidize that whole journey. So this is something that we're wanting to get to in Seeds once we have the financial stability, is to help people along the.
Yeah, thank you. I
know that wasn't super scripted.
Yeah, it's perfect. It relates also to question number 2. So I'd like to change question number 2 to how do you think, how can we grow faster? I do understand that now we have the first tribe of ambassadors, which is super important, but at the end we are kind of in a field of a business of elevating consciousness on a global level. And yeah, so the question is, how do you think, how can we grow faster in terms of elevating the consciousness globally?
Another beautiful question. I don't know if we need to grow faster necessarily, but healthily. And I think we're already doing that, where we have a critical mass of incredible wisdom that's already feeling like a little overwhelming to weave in here. That is showing up and helping stress test the decentralized economic protocols and the governance protocols. And we're building that and getting them into place. And I feel like it's organically growing at the pace that it needs to. But from just a strategic and Haifa standpoint, we've been waiting to do any of our invitations and really kind of open the floodgates, so to speak, until the next passport comes out and until we have the APIs, which is like the plugins that people can then put on their websites in order to invite their communities and start taking payments and things like that. So really, I think in this particular phase, we're kind of focused on the DNA, like getting the core group that is showing up here to be in high alignment, high attunement, focused on the clarity of mission, and really building the community and tribe that's already here. And then I don't think we're ever going to have to think about how do we grow faster. I think the question we're always going to be coming up with is like, how do we handle the growth that we're already experiencing, which is already what, you know, many people at Haifa are already feeling. So I don't know if we ever need to question like, how do we grow faster? It's kind of like, how do we just maintain the growth at the rate that it is, make sure we're nourishing people, ensuring that the journey is really beautiful and clean and understanding, so that when people do show up to this movement, they're like, wow, yes, I'm going to be part of this renaissance. I want to change. I want to like build this new paradigm, that there's a pathway for them to walk down to actually do that. I don't know if we're necessarily there yet, but I think that's especially something for us to focus on this ambassador group and this academy, is helping people through that journey of understanding and resourcing them with the tools so that they can go out there and grow this movement the way it needs to grow. Again,
Thank you.
hopefully these are actually helpful answers. I feel like, you know,
Great.
want to be a little bit more prescriptive and be like, well, actually, we need to go out there and start cold calling organizations. But anyway, I don't think any of that's true. So.
Yeah, maybe I can
perfect.
add to that. Thank you, Martina, for the questions, and also talking or echoing the amount of what we can already handle or trying to handle in the movement. There's so many ambassadors and so many other alliances who still want to onboard and need a hand to do that. So all the ambassadors who are here in this tribe or in these tribes are being prepared to support more people coming on. So the question of how fast can we grow is also how much we all show up together and co-create this to make it easier for others to come on board. So every one of you can contribute to that already starting tomorrow, which is beautiful. So thank you for raising that question and giving that answer, Rieki. There's the next, I also posted this document for all of you in the chat if you want to go into it directly. But here, the next questions are a little bit more concrete. I know that I haven't seen Chris yet, and Kobe can't make it to the call, so I can handle these. But maybe Victoria, you want to voice your question here?
I can, but I have seen that there is a section on governing, so probably it would be more relevant over there. So basically my question was...
Don't worry.
That there is an option for delegating votes for the proposals. So I'm just wondering how that works in technical terms, like where is a button or how that exactly works? Thanks.
Yeah, it's funny. We're actually designing the UI of that. I was just messaging earlier today. So how it'll work is in your passport for each section that you have voice in. So for alliances, campaigns, and referendums, you're going to be able to choose one other account that you're just going to follow their vote. So if they spend 5% of their tokens on one proposal, you're going to spend 5% of your tokens on the same proposal. So all it is just mimicking how they're voting. You can have, you can assign someone to do that for you. In each one of the categories. So you could pick someone who you feel like is going to make the best decisions about alliances. You could choose someone to make the best decisions about campaigns for you and referendums, etc. How this is going to be the future iteration of this is using the same concept for bioregions. So bioregions break out their categories for like housing and food and healthcare, etc. So the future iteration is that, you know, I want this person to be making decisions on healthcare for me, and I want that person to be making decisions on housing because I don't necessarily know a lot about that, but I know a lot about finance. So I'm going to hold my voice tokens for finance and I'll vote on those things. So anyway, that's kind of how delegation works is you can assign another account and you'll follow how they vote.
And did that answer your question?
More or less, I have to check how it works. But if you nominate that person, for example, for now, for the next round, do I renominate or it will be nominated until I kind of withdraw my nomination?
Exactly. It'll stay your nominee until you withdraw it or you change it to someone else or you take it away. Yeah. And that's what's good about this, you know, liquid direct democracy that's better than representative democracy is you don't have to wait 4 years to try to get someone else to better represent you. If you feel like that person's not representing your voice how you want, you can immediately take it away and, you know, vote yourself or give it to somebody else. So.
Interesting, thanks.
Great. So the next question, as I said, I didn't see Chris yet. I don't know whether, oh, he came. Hi, Chris. So your question is up next. Do you want to, fine, how are you? Good to see you. Yeah, perfect. Do you want to give it a little bit context and raise your voice?
Yes, I think the Constitution is a wonderful document, and I was wondering about the history of the document, who has wrote it. So if Rieki, you can give us some information about that.
Yeah, you guys are always wanting to know these things. So I'm probably 90% author. And I've been kind of the one holding all of the space for it. So there's been a lot of wisdom that's come in, but I'm the one that makes the edits, and I'm the one that's been changing it. But at this particular point, I'd say there's been at least 100 people who have given their wisdom to evolving that document and changing it. You know, version 1.0 that I myself wrote and put out there was complete garbage. So I'm really happy about everyone who's, you know, showed up to make that document what it is. But I've been the one that's been technically, for at least 90% of it, you know, typing the words on the page.
So congratulations.
Also mainly because you're the owner, right?
Yeah, I'm just the one.
Sorry,
that
Chris.
the one person needs to hold the document to kind of be the space to actually make sure it's coherent. And that's been my task for both of those documents.
Maybe because not everyone is already familiar also with these processes, how we co-create these documents. So for example, here, Rieki is the owner and started the document, but then it's really wanted that everyone comments on the document and we start co-creating the document. So whether it's the Constitution or also everything else, guidelines and all the documents you will find on your journey. So whenever you feel there's something missing or there's something incorrect or whatever, there's always the option that you comment on the document, and then the owner will receive a message, and then it will be talked about and maybe changed. So depending on what everyone thinks. And maybe Rieki, you can also say something about the possibility of changing the Constitution, because that's also a referendum that has to be voted for. So maybe that's interesting for the ambassadors as well.
So what's happening right now is we did those October calls for the Constitution and the game guide document, try to put as much wisdom as possible. And there's a tremendous amount at this particular moment. You know, a lot of my journey so far in Seeds in Haifa has been a lot around personal growth and getting into a space where I can tap into a higher source of wisdom. And sometimes that looks like fasting. So actually my next step is to go and do a fast. We're going to do a digital detox a little bit later this month, to get myself into a space to then actually dive into that Constitution, get all of that wisdom in the comments section and try to put together a draft version 1.0. And then after I've done that and the new passport's launched, then I'm going to propose the Constitution as to get ratified by the community. And that's when then all the citizens can either vote, yes, we like this Constitution, we want to adopt it, or no. And if it's voted no, then we'll go back to redrafting it and getting the feedback necessary to get a yes. If it is voted yes, then at any point, any member of the citizen or any citizen can come up and say, I want to change paragraph A, it says this, I want to change it to that. And they can put that up as a referendum and all the citizens can vote to change it. And if that passes, then the Constitution will be updated. And then that's how the Constitution can continually get co-created by the community as we make these referendums.
So don't you think it will be much easier to vote the Constitution section by section? It will be much more easy that everybody agree on section 1 and it will pass. Then we can discuss section 2 and it will pass. Because if I disagree only a small point in one section, it will block the whole process.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, you say fast, so we can absolutely do that process. I think it'll just take a lot of time and actually ask for a lot of mental energy for people to vote so many times, and we're already seeing low voter turnout. So what I'm probably going to do, unless there's some pushback against this, is still put it up one time. If there's any sort of significant downvoting, then maybe it does actually make sense, then instead of trying to redraft and put it up as a whole, to then do it section by section. So I think it'd be good to like first sense check if there's a need to do it that way. And then if there is, then I think that's a really brilliant way of going about, you know, getting the first version up there. because then we can actually tease out where people have the most conflict. But if there's no conflict, then it'll be nice to just get it through. But I mean, actually, and now that you mentioned that, happy for you to take a poll in the seeds community and see what they would prefer. And if, you know, the poll says we would prefer to do it section by section, then I will listen to the poll.
My point of view was it's very difficult to understand the 140 pages on the whole document.
Sorry, yes. No, the Constitution will only be the Constitution part of it. So that 140 document is the Constitution and the game guide. So game guide is like 100 pages. The Constitution is really only like, it's those 13 articles. So I think that's like 15 pages or something like that. The Constitution is just the beginning of that document.
Okay.
Okay, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, we're not doing the game guide yet. That's going to be several months down the road before we ratify that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. The next question, Kobe can't be here. He has another call, but I think, Rieki, you read the text from him. So it's about the value and how we, about the currency and the value, how we can stabilize the value, and where does the extra value come from, all these things. I think you read it. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit around that.
Yeah, so value is just a human construct, and in the form of currency, value is just as a form of like liquefied trust. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. So there's two different life cycles of seeds. There's seeds that exist today, which is going to be a different type of conversation, versus seeds after go live, which is a different type. So I'll speak first to seeds after go live, because that's unfortunately what we actually talk about most in seeds. And I think that's what's causing some confusion. So after go live is when we're starting to, I have pictures, doesn't matter, I don't need to show you pictures. So yeah, I like the liquid trust anyway. So after go live is when we're actually trying to balance the value of seeds. So that's when we're increasing or decreasing the supply of seeds to meet the changes in demand, so that the purchasing power of seeds remains more stable. And then those new seeds we're creating to meet new demand is where this extra value is coming from. It's kind of what central banks are doing today, where they're making tens of trillions of dollars and they're just pumping it into the economy. They're kind of doing the same thing, where they're able to create this currency into existence. And that's what's going to happen after go live, is we're going to be able to make new currency when there's new demand for it. And that's the extra value that we're giving out in the harvest. So in a sense, again, it's kind of like exactly how central banks are operating. They made 10 trillion in the seeds world. We still make that 10 trillion, but now it's like, seeds, how do we spend this 10 trillion? Okay, we're going to give 30% to everyone who's using this currency. Cool. We're going to give 30% to all the organizations based on how regenerative they work. Great. We're going to give 30% to all the local communities for them to decide how to spend it. And then the last 20%, we're going to let everyone decide how to spend this. So that's the post go live like value and how it's created and distributed. You know, pre-go live, it's more about getting people to believe in this vision, adopt a new currency, and hedge against the failing dollar. So right now, again, dollar's losing a lot of value, and that's one of the reasons why like Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency markets are going up, is because people are leaving dollars and looking for a hedge, something else that's more stable. This might be confusing and maybe not the best way to explain this, but bear with me. So seeds right now, they're a fixed supply currency. There's only 3.14 billion that will exist. And the currency that is going into circulation is only 40% of that. 5% of which is happening from Haifa, when people are actually buying seeds from Haifa. And every 1.1 million seeds sold from Haifa, I'm saying numbers that are confusing, every batch of seeds that Haifa sells increases the sale price by 3.3%. And that's most of the seeds that are in circulation need to be bought from Haifa right now. Or we have the campaign seeds. And the idea behind campaign seeds is to give a small number of seeds to a wide number of people to invite them into the movement. The reason why seeds are designed this way in the beginning is we actually want the value of seeds to grow over the next year before go live. So right now the price is about $1.80. We're wanting to get the price to about 80 cents to $1.30 before we hit go live. And we actually won't trigger go live until the price hits at least 80 cents per seed. So that's one of the conditions that need to be met before we stop being a fixed supply currency. So the new value is really when just people are buying into a new system, when they're saying, you know what, I don't like my dollars anymore, they're losing value, I would rather have seeds. So I'm going to trade my dollars for seeds. That's, you know, bringing value into the ecosystem. When people adopt this as a medium of exchange currency and start doing their exchanges in seeds rather than in dollars, now they're bringing in their economic value into the seeds ecosystem, which also helps it grow. So it's just as more people join the ecosystem, they trade out their currencies for seeds, they start using it as a currency, this is all growing the value of it. And instead of, in the first phase, instead of us creating new tokens when there's new demand, instead of doing that and keeping a stable price, the price of seeds will be going up along the way, which is helping everyone in the movement right now, you know, grow the holdings that they have. It's late for me, and I feel like I explained that incredibly poor, but there's a token allocation and economics document that I believe goes over this a little bit better. And there's a video that's like 20 minutes long that I feel like probably does this explanation a little bit more justice. That's at the beginning of that document. But I'm happy to answer any questions that are confusing after that explanation.
Thank you, Rieki. We will also probably tackle it a little bit in the economics session next week with Mark. I guess, Mark, right? Yes. So bear with us if it's still, I mean, it's anyway so much information and totally overwhelming for most of you probably. But is there any specific question right now for Rieki on this topic? Otherwise, I would move forward with the next question.
I mean, the hard part is like you have to have a pretty decent understanding, and nobody fully understands how the current system's operating. But you need to have like a good understanding of that, which is incredibly confusing in order to understand how seeds actually like improves upon that. So it's, yeah, it's quite a lot to unpack to really be able to explain this effectively. But anyway.
And I just got a message that Victoria has to leave, so I'm not sure whether this next question from Victoria, maybe we postpone it to later. And maybe Jess, you want to talk a little bit about organizational structure, sociocracy. You have brought up some question. Maybe you can just give a little context for everyone and then ask your question directly.
Okay. So this has to do with governance and how we're making decisions. And so I've read some previous posts that say things like, you know, we're not trying to use a specific framework, yet we are super reliant on voting, which is that yes, no, majority rule perspective, which a lot of us out there maybe say hasn't really worked for a lot of people, the minority, if you will. And so I think, you know, I've talked to you before, Rieki, about sociocracy, and it has those 4 principles: consent, decision, circles, elections by consent, and double linking. This is not holacracy. Holacracy is something different. That's someone that branded sociocracy and tried to make it very whatever. And so I'm curious, you know, what is the decision-making framework that Seeds is using? How are we making decisions? And yeah.
Totally. Democracy, as at least one person, one vote type of voting, is incredibly broken, especially if it is just majority. So if you're doing one person, one vote, and it's a 50-50 majority, then you have things like in the US where at any given time, half the people are pissed off. And actually, in a lot of cases, everyone's pissed off because they had to pick a lesser evil anyway. So Seed starts out with voting because that's what people are used to. So it gives a platform where we can evolve into all sorts of beautiful ways of doing governance, but I feel like that needs to come later, and we need to start with where we're at. It's also why Seeds uses a currency that looks like a dollar and looks like a euro, because that's what people are used to. But what it's giving us the capability to do is to completely rethink how we distribute value. Things like the gratitude token that we've talked about extensively, and you know, we can start to, anyway, I don't need to go down that road. So the idea is we start using governance with something that people are used to, and then we can evolve into more complex ways. The other thing is, like, a lot of the ways of doing sociocracy, as far as using decentralized autonomous tools to do it, are really complex, and they take a lot of coding and development to actually build. So that's probably the biggest reason why we haven't adopted a lot of that into Seeds yet, is it's just it's a massive engineering feat to be able to do that well. But with all this being said, how voting works within Seeds right now is, and why I feel like it's just superior over current forms of democracy, is because we're tokenizing that vote, meaning everyone has a token, or you earn tokens based on how much you're contributing, which is already different than one person, one vote, which is how a really dedicated minority can kind of get their rights abused by mob rule majority. So an example I love using is gay rights had a really hard time being passed in a lot of countries because the majority of people who it really didn't impact at all had an equal voice for the people that are extremely impacted. You can imagine in the US, if gay rights and gun rights are going up on the same proposal, and I hate using stereotypes like this, but it helps prove a point, and everyone was given 50 tokens to vote with, gay rights probably would have had a much easier time passing because all the people that are really dedicated to that issue would take all of their votes and put it onto that issue and saying that, yes, we want this to pass. While people who would prefer to actually vote for gun rights and they actually aren't really impacted by gay rights, they probably wouldn't vote that one down. So bringing in a cost to voting is really important, I think, because now people are going to vote on the issues that really impact them, and they're not going to vote on the things that they're just, ignorant about, which is what typically happens in our culture and what the whole mob and the tyranny of the masses is that people have an equal voice and they can vote on things, but they don't really have a lot of information about, et cetera, et cetera. So this is our, experiment on being able to improve on that model, saying like, hey, if there's a cost to voting and you can delegate your vote to someone else who might do it better than you, and your voice is based on how much you're actually contributing. So we're ensuring that those who are contributing the most are the ones that have the most voice, et cetera, et cetera. This is like how we're starting off doing governance, but giving us a pathway to evolve into all sorts of different ways of doing governance as we, explore and develop them. If any of that made sense.
So, oh yeah, it makes perfect sense. And I definitely understand at the code level, and it would make sense to me that in order to develop more egalitarian ways of doing things, that we would want to be operating as a community in a more egalitarian way. Like, for example, I got a message in the ambassador thing and it's like, oh, we changed the passport. Now it's only one transaction for resident and one transaction for citizen or something like that, which I actually thought was like, one, no one ever asked me. I didn't even get asked. Like, where was that? Like, where are these decisions being made? Like, there's no circles that say, this is the passport. There's representation in the ambassadors. I think it's a good thing you've made me actually make it difficult to understand how to do a transaction. I'm here. I've like studied. I'm like, it's not just like, oh, do a transaction and I'm in. I really like that. So I felt like, so I watched decisions and having meetings and people are like, well, let's do this and let's do that. And it's like, well, where's the aim and where's the responsibility and where's the connection between the different circles that are going on? Like, it feels like there's just like no structure to the decision making that's happened on the people level.
I'm so glad you said that. So the next version of the passport is going to have this referendum section. Haifa has been kind of being an autocrat up until now and making these quick decisions to try to like get in line with the current constitution, which is what we keep changing is, but you're right, I tend to change it to one thing. That was an autocratic decision. We didn't ask the Seeds community and I'm going to take that one on me. And why we're doing this is we're just trying to really quickly iterate. And then once we launch that referendum feature, we're not going to make changes unless it goes to a referendum, which means the citizens are going to be informed with every change being made and being able to have a vote on them. But first we needed to build and launch that feature, which is coming with the next passport. Also on governance is there's so many different scales we're working at within Haifa and Seeds. So Seeds as a global governance, we're going to be using this tokenized one to start with. But each bioregion, so each local community within Seeds is going to be able to come up with their own forms of governance of how they want to govern as a bioregion. So they start off with the same basic toolkit that Seeds offers them, but then they can iterate and build and decide how they want to do governance all on their own. And we imagine then that every bioregion is going to have their own form of, community governance and how they want to govern at a community level. And both of those types of governance is also different from how Haifa governs. And Haifa is more like a sociocracy, a little bit of holacracy, and a little bit of a DAO and all these weird things. And that's a completely different way of doing governance. So right now we're kind of exploring with 3 different types of doing new forms of governance. So there's a lot of different experiments going on. Ultimately, the aim is how do we create things better together at scale? So everyone's voice is welcome into this. Once we launch this referendum thing, anyone could put up a referendum and propose to make changes to how the governance is happening. And we really want to make sure everyone's feeling involved in part of this process. So again, once that referendum thing is launched, feel free to put up any idea to change this process. If you know how we can build some code to move more towards a sociocracy, let's make that proposal, let's put it up there, and let's use the current tools we have to build better tools.
Cool. Okay, great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we're coming down to Drigo's question. That was a bigger text here. Maybe Drigo, you also just want to raise your own voice and give us a little context where that's coming from and ask the question directly.
Sure. I think a lot of this was actually addressed already by Rieki in the response earlier. So I'm not sure if it's necessary to bring up again. I think the point is that you know, I agree completely with the principle of rewarding your team highly, right? And if you're taking on this audacious project, you want to reward your team really well. So I think that the only point that remains to be discussed there is looking at how, like, what the role of the ambassador is. You know, is it only bringing people in or organizations in, or is it beyond that? And what's the best way to compensate ambassadors, right? So if an ambassador is spending 20 hours or 30 hours a week on his or her role, then that might not be very different from somebody at Haifa who's also spending 20 or 30 hours a week, right? But the compensation structures are quite different. So I guess that's one that's pretty relevant to the discussion today. And I guess I would also combine that with my other question in terms of what is the role? What do you see, or what does Haifa see, or what do we see is the role for ambassadors going forward?
Thank you for that question. So first, I'm going to preface this by saying everything I'm going to say about this is probably bullshit, and it's just my opinion. Because ultimately, the role for ambassadors is for you guys to come in and co-create it, and for you guys to kind of decide what works for you. And I know the movement building, there's some people, Danny, Franz, and Lisa, that have been working months on coming up with like how to properly bring ambassadors into this, and how do we build, you know, reward systems that are fair and exciting and joyful, etc. So this is a co-creative process. It's very open. How I particularly see it is everyone is an ambassador insofar as they're just inviting people and earning referrals. If someone chooses to take that on as like a full-time gig, then I feel like we ought to have some type of additional payment, like a basic income or something that's also covering them, so that their needs up front are met by that, you know, basic income, but then their back-end reward is being generated by all the invites they're helping generate. Because the referral reward is actually pretty substantial right now. I feel like it's being tweaked a little bit, which is also a co-creative process for you guys to also decide, like, what should the ambassador reward be. So right now there's 8% of the total supply of seeds set aside to give out as referral rewards. How we give those out is being tweaked right now. You know, Mark's part of that, and I'm sure you guys can dive into that a little bit more on the next economics call. So ultimately, like, you guys are co-creating how you reward yourselves. I would love for the ambassadors who are most excited about going out here and telling the story to tell us, you know, what it would take for you guys to drop all of the stuff you're doing and, you know, push seeds forward full time. Like, let's design that together, because ultimately it's a virtuous feedback loop. As ambassadors go out there and grow the movement, more value is created for us to give right back to the ambassadors to go out and grow the movement. We can bring on more ambassadors as this becoming a virtuous cycle. So, you know, it's like a gardener going out there and planting their own food. It just creates a massive amount of abundance. So in that sense, we want to, you know, maybe we should call you all gardeners instead of ambassadors. Idea bomb. Take it and leave it, you know? Like,
yeah.
so anyway, there's an idea there. I think that basic income model mixed with referrals makes a lot of sense, but I would love it to not come from me. I would love it to be a co-creation by the ambassadors yourselves and the movement building circle.
Maybe I can add to that.
Awesome.
We are actually already creating these things, co-creating it. In the movement building circle, there's different work groups on different topics. What was Rieki just, you know, tackling. So it is the referral rewards, but there's also already, we call it bounties or quests, what, you know, ambassadors can receive in seeds when they do specific tasks, like writing documents, like when alliances come on board, you know, write a story about the alliance, or co-creating a project, or translating texts for the community. So there's already different things you can do to earn seeds, but we're also working on a model how to reward ambassadors to facilitate bioregions, to facilitate topic work groups, to facilitate or host e-town halls on specific topics. So there's really a lot of things starting to grow right now, and Lisa, Franz, and I are trying to set up a guideline how to do that. And we will also have a session within the Academy in about 2 weeks, where we will explain to all of you what is the status quo, and also want you to co-create with us what you think is needed additionally to, you know, move forward from this. So it's a really good topic, and I'm happy that Rieki opens up a little bit here, but there will be more in a few weeks, so bear with us. Okay, so yeah, I want to open up now. Oh, sorry, Rieki. Yeah.
Just one last thing to cap on that is radical honesty and transparency. So what I ask for everyone here is, if you're feeling a certain way, like, hey, I don't think Ambassadors is designed very well, so I'm just going to, you know, disappear from the movement. What I would suggest is to actually voice your concerns, like speak up, be transparent, be honest about what you're feeling in every capacity. If you feel like, hey, Rieki is holding a ton of deferred seeds right now, which I am, then call me out for it. Let's say like, hey, I feel that that's a problem, you know. I personally actually think it's a problem too. Like, we're expecting seeds to go up in value a lot quicker than they did, so that we were going to get paid a lot less. And now we're in this position where Haifa's treasury is a little bit lower than it wanted to be, and I'm holding more seeds than I wanted to hold. So I'm in this weird ethical conundrum where I'm trying to sort out, you know, what I'm going to do about this. But either way, on all of those sides, I would love it if, however you're feeling, is just speak up about it. And that way we can actually start the dialogue, have the conversation, and build things that work for people, you know?
Yeah. And maybe one more thing, also because it came up in some channels, and also Fab was just mentioning something in the chat. I think what is really important for all of us to know now is that we are at a process, or at a moment where we say, okay, first we have to look from the perspective of seeds, or maybe even Haifa, what is needed right now, and then propose, whether it's a role or a request or something, what somebody wants to bring in. And then we vote for it as a community, and then the person starts working or co-creating. So what we don't want to see anymore, that there's expectations or mismanagement because people start creating, and because we always say, let's co-create, and that the expectation is high that everything will be rewarded. So it's really important that we start talking about these things, that there's a process, that you set up a proposal together, that we vote for it, and then we say, okay, what would be the reward you want to have for that? And then we have a budget for it, we can claim it. But you know, this process has to be implemented, otherwise we have no structure for these things. So I really want to encourage you all in our ambassador calls and in the academy calls. We will have one session where it's about co-creating as a tribe and co-creating as ambassadors. So we will kind of gamify this experiment together. But it's really important for us that you know that we want to support you as much as we can, but we have to talk about it and vote for it first, because before you start, and then expect to be rewarded. That's really important. Okay. I hope that clears a little bit the channel discussion.
I know we're supposed to go over something with Irina and Soren. I was going to give them some feedback, which I think would be super useful. So maybe we can give them the ability to share their screen. They can bring that up. And then I just want to echo what Danny said, is within Haifa as well, there's the do, which everything has to go through the do and get agreed upon by the community in order to set the expectation. That's like the whole point of blockchain, is to be the single source of truth. So the same thing needs to happen on the seed side. For with anyone to have the expectation that they're going to get rewarded for something, the community needs to say, yes, we want to pay for that beforehand in order to set that expectation. So I think that's, you know, incredibly important.
Yeah, the communication.
Yes, but I mean, that's the point of decentralized governance here.
I don't know whether it was just on my side, but you were a little bit interrupted because of the connection. So maybe you can say the last sentence once more.
Oh, all I was saying is that everything needs to be agreed upon by the community before an expectation can be set. So it's the same thing in Haifa, that, you know, a quest needs to come through Haifa first to say, I would like to do X and get paid Y. First, the community needs to say, yes, we would like to pay you X for doing Y, before an expectation is set to get paid that. So we need to make sure that, you know, we're managing expectations because, you know, some people are like adding contributions, but they haven't actually got told by the community that the community wants that. So that's why the do exists. That's why, you know, the passport will exist with alliances and contributions and referendums. That's where we need to go to first to signal to the community that yes, you're going to get paid for what you're doing. Otherwise, you run a risk that the community is not going to want what you're offering.
Right. So I'm just minding the time. We have 5 more minutes. If this is going to be a longer discussion, we can totally set up a next session around like bioregions and ambassador work and how to reward and process it. But let's use the next 5 minutes and then see.
Probably better then. Sorry, Irina, Soren. I could give you guys direct feedback if you want to keep running on this, but I think it's actually better for us to have a longer discussion here because 5 minutes, we're not going to be able to give you the feedback healthy here. I feel like
okay, that's fine. Thanks.
I also saw some come up then. I saw Justin. I think you raised your hand. You wanted to just ask a question. So maybe we could just spend the last 4 minutes doing some quick Q&A.
Yeah, maybe you just raise your hand or open your mic and just start talking when you have a question. Justin, go ahead.
Hey, I'm Justin. I'm in El Dorado Springs, Colorado. I was having it's like a feeling, Rieki was talking about kind of radical transparency and honesty, and I was having a discussion about like refugees. And so like my friend was trying to solve refugee issues. He's in Indiana and Turkey. And I was like, well, that's really far away from you, right? So I was like, how about refugees here in the US? And then I was kind of having this moment of like, oh, like this is, if I was to embody that experience, I kind of feel like a refugee entering into a brand new like country or continent and trying to find my way and establishing not only my citizenship, but finding the language and also finding my way to finding a job and work. And so like I have, it's really, I have the Discord group, I have the Telegram group. I've been on probably about, I don't know, between 5 to 7 calls while trying to figure out how can I really bring my whole self into this ecosystem. You know, and it's really kind of beautiful and disorienting at the same time. And so I just wanted to maybe name that as someone that is, I mean, I believe in what this is, and I feel all the potential and possibility, and I feel very welcomed. I feel open, like, you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave, but also I don't know how to even, I don't know who I am here. I don't know how to establish that really. And so I just wanted to kind of give that as someone that would like to be a citizen and beyond, but is kind of, you know, yeah, struggling at the ground.
Thank you for maybe Rieki, before you say something, I just want to also share, Justin, we haven't met before, but we are in this ambassador group. We are trying to set up a buddy system. So in the near future, whenever someone comes in, you will get a buddy who's already a little bit more familiar with the system. And then he's like holding your hand while you're coming on board. So this is just in the creation of being developed for the near future. So that will hopefully help a lot on that.
Yeah, welcome, Justin. The thing is, we're all refugees here. We've kind of crash landed a wooden boat that was, you know, rocking in the terrible sea onto this random island, and we're exploring it while navigating it and mapping it all at the same time. So we've been kind of through this strange situation where, you know, I've been on this journey a little bit longer than most here, and I still feel like I have no idea what the heck's going on, and I'm just being like pulled by my, you know, coattails. So I think there is kind of an expectation that somebody actually has a clue what's happening here. And I would like to set the stage that I don't think anyone has a clue what's happening here. And we're all kind of co-creating it together. So we all have a shared outcome. The current civilization we have sucks. We need some tools to make it better. And we have a vague vision and our hearts are telling us what it might look like and how we could create it. And all I'm really doing, and I think all that we're doing, is just saying, great, we got to show up. We're going to figure out how to do this together. And that's it. So that's kind of the stage we've set. So I really want to get rid of the idea or expectation that someone knows what's going on here and that we're all feeling like refugees. And it's kind of our collective purpose here to kind of do sense making as a whole, figure out how to show up. You know, if you feel like a structure isn't in place that welcomes you on board, that's probably a good signal that maybe you could build a structure to like help welcome people on board, you know? So I think that's actually the best way that people can go about this is like whatever's bothering you, if you're feeling like something needs to get done, then you might actually be the best person to do that particular thing. But no, or maybe not.
Yeah, totally. And I'm seeing your fingers, Stephen, but sorry, I have to mind the time for those who want to go to the proposal nursery now. And I want to invite all ambassadors to come and join, because it's about how to learn to write proposals for campaigns and alliance shares and other things. Everyone else is for sure always welcome as well. And I want to really thank Rieki for your time, and everyone else who came along and shared and co-created and asked questions and listened in. And I'm really looking forward to see you all together again with Mark in the session next week and in the other sessions this week. And thank you, Rieki. Maybe we set up another call. I think there's many more questions that will come up now, and maybe you will offer one more of your hour in the near future. So thanks for everyone to come. And we can also continue this conversation in the Seeds Ambassador channel. So if you have more questions, please just raise them there and we collect them, okay? Sorry, Stephen, that we run out of time. See you all soon.
I want to say thank you to all the refugee gardeners for showing up and to create this with you all. So until next time.
Yeah, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Gracias. Bye-bye.